So the first thing that we always like to do when we come up to a door is show the customer the two different spots where we can mount the screen. Going in here, we're looking at something called an inside mount. Going outside here, it's called an outside mount. People typically like to go inside here for what we call our inside mount. Having said that, we need to then look at how is this door going to seal off. We need to have one continuous plane all the way around the door frame. We know the top rail is going to go along here and seal off against this edge. Following down below, we'll see that there's nothing. And this is where the importance comes in for the sill adapters. If we look at what we call our top sill, if we're trying to finish off this face here, if I throw this on, it's tilted way too far forward, so I know that's not going to work. If I look at our 5-inch sill here, it's not going to really work either. You could cut it back and have the back portion under here, but it's just not necessary. What I would recommend here is what I call the brake sill. That brake sill is going to sit just like that, give us a nice face for our bottom rail, and give it plenty of support. What we'll do then is, knowing that we're going to use our brake sill, we're going to take our measurements. On a front door like this, which is pretty typical, you're going to take the measurement in 2 spots. So we'll rest the tape measure on top of the lip down below on the sill adapter and run it up into the corner here. Or we can use this top edge here for our measurement. I'll see that I have about 80 5/8. I'll move the sill adapter over to the other side, and I'm going to take the same measurement. Again, I have about 80 5/8. It'd be pretty tight, so what I recommend is I always recommend taking off about 1/8 of an inch, making it 80 1/2. So we've now decided to go with the inside mount. Looking at this, which is pretty typical, this 1/4 inch here really isn't enough for good top rail support. If we were to have gone with the outside mount, we have plenty. What we do in a case like this is put in what's called decorum. Decorum stands for decorative molding. This will go up in here like this and give me plenty of support for the top rail. If you want to, if the measurement seems sort of tight, you could back off another 1/8 of an inch, because now we have plenty of room for that top rail. If the customer had chosen the outside mount, we're mounting out here. We're going along this edge, so this is our plane that we need to complete. Again, the square sill would work, but it's not the best choice. What I would go with here is the 5-inch sill. I'd then cut the edges around the corner so it looks like it really belongs. There's score marks on the underside of this that you could crank off so that fits nice and snug under here. This face will then flush back to here. I can now take my measurements. Tape measure on top of the sill. And what I do maybe is just go up to this corner again, call it 80 7/8, and I'd add an inch. So 81 7/8. The reason I add that 1 inch is that top rail is an inch. So that means the housing has to go up an inch as well. Going over to the other side, we do the same thing. Again, I'm seeing about 80 7/8, add an inch, 81 7/8. So the most important thing here is to really get the theory down of finding that continuous plane that we're going to mount the door on, then finishing it off as necessary, whether it's we need decorum up top here, or if we're going to need a sill adapter down below. This is going to be pretty standard on front doors. If we're looking at your new vinyl sliders, you're probably going to never run into having to use a sill adapter or decorum. Alright, the first thing I like to do when installing a door, and the way I train people, is take the actual physical door first and put it up at the opening it's supposed to be at. Again, there's 2 places we could have mounted here, inside or outside. If there's a different installer going out than the person that measured, if I come in here with the door, I'll know what the original measurer wanted to do. Obviously the door would have been a lot taller if they were thinking about doing an inside mount. But I know since it's down here, it's fitting nice and tight inside this plane, that they meant for an inside mount. This is where the importance of decolim comes in. If we had mounted the door out here, I got all this surface area to mount the top rail to. I don't really have so much in here. So this is where we put in the decolim. The decolim is basically going to bring the face of this down and help finish off this plane here. Now you can see the flat face we have for support for that top rail and for the door. First thing I always want to do is finish off the plane first. So I'm going to install the decolim and the brake sill down below. I chose the brake sill. It goes good with the homeowner's sill. Gives me a nice square face to finish off the plane and mount that bottom track to. So I'm going to use my 7/64 on the sill as well as the decolim. I'm going to go on this first line right here. Make sure that this face on the sill lines up with that inner jamb on the door. I'll go ahead and make my holes in this face along here. My screw's going to run up through there, cinch tight up top, and then this face will be what gives support for that top rail. And don't forget the countersink. So now I've completed the plane up top and down below. I have sufficient support for the top and bottom rail. I'll now put the first screw in, which is going to be the top housing screw. Again, here's your handle pack. There's going to be 2 packages with silver screws. I'm going to know these longer ones are for the housing because they have the housing caps and the bumper stops. The handle screws are going to have the handle plugs. They're going to be the shorter ones. So you're going to see I have the housing placed on top of that bottom flange on the bottom of the sill adapter. Then going up, I've pre-drilled a hole up here. I'm going to run my top screw. I'm going to drill it in somewhat lightly. And I'm going to take my measurement from this edge of the housing, because the rail is going to plug in all the way to here, all the way across to here. So I've cut the top rail at 34 inches. I've also cut the bottom rail at that as well, and I'll get to that in a second. One of the most important parts when assembling the door is to make sure the side that's going to plug into the housing, you take your table saw at about 35 degrees and you cut that corner away on the rail. I've also done it on the bottom rail. If the homeowner forgets to maintain the door, you could at some point get drag, and this stops the screen from any type of tearing when catching on a corner. We've basically eliminated that corner. So I'm going to pull away with my right hand on the pull bar, insert the top rail, nice and tight against the housing, kind of push up. If you notice over here, I'm about 1/8 of an inch away from being against here. Having both rails cut at the same length, I want to duplicate the same exact thing down below, which guarantees that when I pull the pull bar over, it's going to seal off perfectly against this edge. So far the only screw I have set before I continue on is this top one in the housing. I'm going to go down and put in everything, every screw down below with this bottom rail and housing, and then go back up top. So I'm going to pull away, lift up on that pull bar a little bit. I'm going to take the screws that came in the rail pack, the self-tapping screws. And if you're pretty good with the drill, you're not going to have to do any pre-drilling. We're going to do one here in the housing, one again to the rail on the housing, one more in the middle, and one more at the end. Only the bottom rail on a single door gets a screw in the middle. So again, we set this first screw, then we set all the screws down below. Now we're going to set where the top rail is. I'm going to pull this out a little bit and apply some pressure up. Put that first screw in that is closest to the housing. Then I'll go over and do my last hole. So the way we're going to set the height on the rail is just simply by pulling it across. You'll see that the rail sets its own height. And I'm going to go put the bumper pads on and put these housing caps on. Alright, again, for my handle height, I'm going to go a little bit above the homeowner's door handle, which for me is about 90 degrees with my arm. I'll take the screws. I'm going to set the handle back against the edge of this, mark it, take my drill with my 1/4" drive and go all the way through. I'll put both screws in, apply pressure with my pinky and my thumb, and push them through. And then lastly with the handles, I'm just going to put in the plug so you don't have to look at that ugly screw head. Now the last thing is putting on your magnet. Alright, so almost every magnet on a front door is going to get put on the same way. You have your spacer here. This will help push it out past the fuzzy on the pull bar. And I'm going to run my self-tapping screw right through on this middle groove on the pull bar. Then I'm going to bring this over, line the plate up for where I need to put my screws for my strike plate. First thing I'm going to do is mark it, make a little mark, then I'm going to check it at the top of the magnet. I can see that my mark is a little bit above the magnet, which is right where I want it. Now you're done. You can see this 35-degree cut on the rail up in the corner. If the homeowner forgets to spray the door, what could potentially happen is some sort of dragging like this, and the material would want to get wrapped around the corner and cut it. Since we've been doing that for the past 6 years, we've eliminated any type of fraying on screens. But what you're going to sell each customer is our grease the silicone spray. It's going to go on the bottom and on the top rail. You're done.